With Venom finally coming out this week, I thought I'd dive back into the last movie where Venom showed up, Spider-Man 3. Though it may be the weakest film in the Sam Raimi trilogy, it might just have the most powerful message. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my theological analysis for Spider-Man 3. Like I said, it's probably the weakest film in the Sam Raimi trilogy, but it's definitely got the strongest message, I think, in the Sam Raimi trilogy. Now, as we dive into this and talk about Venom, how excited are you for the new Venom? Do you think they'll get it right this time? Let's talk about it in the comments.
Uncle Ben meant the world to us. But he wouldn't want us living 1 second with revenge in our hearts. It's like a poison. It can take you over, turn us into something ugly.
Wise words, Aunt May. You know, in a very real way, Harry foreshadows the entire message of this film in like the first 10 to 15 minutes of this movie and gives us a perfect illustration of what Aunt May just said. I mean, seriously, the movie opens and you have Harry who hates Peter and has vengeance in his heart towards Peter because he thinks Peter killed his dad. So Harry goes out to get vengeance. Now, vengeance has already poisoned their friendship. He doesn't like Peter anymore. That's ruined. Now he's out trying to murder Peter in cold blood, and then he bonks his head. Now, when he bonks his head and he wakes up, he forgets the beef that he had with Peter. He forgets the debt that he was trying to force Peter to pay. He forgets it, so he lets it go, and we see a real difference. When he held on to the burden, it poisoned his relationships, it poisoned his soul, and it turned him dark and evil and pretty much twisted him into a monster. As soon as he let it go, as soon as he forgot it, it was like a burden off his shoulders. He was so full of joy.
It feels like somehow I've been gone for a really long time. Now I'm back home.
So, in a very real way, he's a picture of what's going to happen the rest of this movie. So what is the symbiote and what does the symbiote do?
It amplifies characteristics of its host.
Hey, give me another cookie.
Especially aggression. This could be dangerous.
It thrives off of what's already there in its host, and it feeds off of that, and it amplifies that. So we got to take a look at Peter Parker and look at what's already there that the symbiote is going to feed off of and amplify. Now, in the first movie, a root of bitterness took hold that has not been uprooted and has not been resolved and has gone unchecked now for 3 freaking movies. The man that Peter Parker believed killed his uncle died in front of Peter. And in that moment, as he went to attack that guy and that guy died, Peter thought it was over. He thought he got the resolution as this man, this murderer who killed his freaking uncle is now lying dead in front of him. Vengeance took root in his heart. That unforgiveness and that bitterness took root, and that was only the beginning. And because he thought that was the end, it grows unchecked. Now, in Spider-Man 3, he is absolutely flying high on himself. And you know, vengeance is incredibly self-focused. It's all about, I deserve satisfaction. I deserve it at your expense. I deserve to feel good at your expense. And maybe at this point, he doesn't have somebody that he's hating. Maybe at this point, he doesn't have somebody that he wants to kill. But that self-focused branch of vengeance is definitely blossoming in his life right now, because all that he's thinking about is himself and what he deserves. And the way this comes out, it's poisoning his heart and it's poisoning his relationship with MJ. I mean, Mary Jane is in this play and gets a horrendous review. So she goes to bring this to Peter, and what she wants is for Peter to be there for her emotionally, to hear her pain and to comfort her and just be there with her in that moment. But he can't. In fact, he kind of laughs at it. She reads the review and he's like, oh, well, you know.
Believe me, I know. Spider-Man gets attacked all the time.
This isn't about you.
And so he's unavailable to her, and it's slowly beginning to put a wedge in their relationship. And then she gets fired from the play, and she would love to tell Peter about it, but now Spider-Man is receiving the key to the city. Oh, it's Spider-Man's special day. So she can't say that then. But there's Peter in the audience, and he goes to take a picture of Mary Jane, and he takes a picture of her. But did you notice how he moved the camera over, and she's way off center, and dead center of the frame is Spidey the Mighty, the banner that these people made? Like, he just continues just to get high on himself. I mean, he's standing up there, and he's like, oh, they love me.
They love me.
Mary Jane is sitting there in pain, feeling like nobody loves her.
It wasn't very good.
And all Peter can do is be excited how he feels like everybody loves him. When he receives the key to the city, he says to Gwen Stacy on the stage, go ahead, lay one on me. And that romantic Spider-Man upside down corny kiss from the first movie, he now does with another woman while Mary Jane watches. Why? Not to make her mad or anything. He's just so high on himself that he's not thinking about her. He's not thinking about how that would make her feel, how special that kiss was to her. And he took something that was just theirs and he gave it away to another woman because what he cared about was how much the press and the people would absolutely love it. That's where his mind was. That's where his heart was. And that's kind of what that root of bitterness was doing. He might not be feeling particularly bitter, but one of the fruits of that is that total self-focus, and that's exactly where he is. So we get to where he wants to propose to Mary Jane, and we find that he can't, because Mary sits down to pour her heart out to him. And again, he gets high on himself. You can't let that review get to you.
I see Spider-Man posters in the window. Kids running around with me on their sweaters. It's a big Halloween item. I don't know. I guess I've become something of an icon.
Maybe she wasn't going to talk about the review. Maybe she was going to say, I was right about the review because I got fired today. But that never got to come out of her mouth because all he could talk about was how great he is. And this time he didn't even relate it to bad critics. He just talked about how great he is. Until finally she's just like, you gave away our kiss. And it's like that sobering moment where it's like, oh, poopy. But it continues to get worse and worse because the police call and they say, Flint Marko, the guy that actually killed your uncle, is at large. Now this is how I know the bitterness is there and has been growing this entire time. It doesn't even take a second and Peter is ready to kill. He's angry at the cops because they haven't done their job. He's angry because they lied. He's angry that Uncle Ben's murderer that ruined his life is still out there somewhere. How could this person that has hurt me so much still be around? And so now he begins to hunt Marko, listening to the police scanner, waiting, forgetting Mary Jane, forgetting everything. All he wants is his freaking satisfaction, killing the person that hurt him so freaking much. And as he lays there in bed that night with fever dreams, imagining, it's not even real, but it's his imagination of how this man hurt Uncle Ben, how this man hurt him. This is when we have the horror film-like scene of the symbiote taking over Peter Parker. I really get the sense in this scene that as much as it may be attracted to Peter because he's got powers, it's definitely attracted because of the root of bitterness. It's hungry, its food is ready, and it's ready to consume, to amplify that so that it can survive, so that it can have that, and it bonds to Peter Parker. It takes away his inhibitions, it amplifies that, and he feels so good.
This feels good.
So as soon as he hears where Flint Marko is, he's there in a second. And you see he has a choice. Normal suit or black suit. And he picks the black suit because you knew what was already in his heart. So he put on the black suit to amplify what was already there so he could do this without guilt. And he had been murdering this guy in his heart for so long, it's no surprise that he finally murdered Flint Marko in this scene. I mean, yeah, Flint Marko doesn't die here. Sandman lives through this whole situation. But the intent and the heart was murder, and Peter, for all intents and purposes, murdered him. And you notice it really didn't bring any sense of satisfaction whatsoever. He was still a deeply wounded and angry person even after that. So he tries to put some things back together, but this is when Harry's memory comes back. And we get the true meaning of this cliche saying, hurt people hurt people. Harry is hurt and wounded, so he decides he's gonna hurt and wound his best friend. He forces Mary Jane to dump him to hurt him. He reveals to Peter, I'm the other guy, to hurt him. So what happens? Peter is now in deepest pain because he's lost the most precious thing in his life, so he runs to medication, the black suit, the symbiote, the thing that's going to feed off that aggression in him and amplify it in him while it suppresses his inhibitions and amplifies all that darkness that is now inside. The symbiote is now Peter Parker's medication for the pain that he's feeling, and then he goes and scars half of Harry's face to hurt him. But he's not even done here. Throughout this whole film, you've had Eddie Brock, and Eddie Brock is a poser and he's a cheater. That's what he is, just by himself. That's what's already in his heart. He photoshops a picture of Spider-Man to push Peter out of that job so that he could take that job because he's got Gwen Stacy and that's his best gal. Well, Peter exposes him and he loses his job. And then Peter takes Gwen Stacy, his girl, and so takes everything from this guy. Took his credibility, took his job, and took his girl, and has left him with nothing. And then Peter descends into deepest darkness. Oh no, not that. Nope. Nope. Oh no. Can we stop this? So he brings Gwen Stacy to this club for the sole purpose, to hurt Mary Jane in the deepest, darkest... Oh, no. Okay, can we fast forward? Oh, this is so bad. The whole purpose of bringing Gwen here was to hurt Mary Jane. So he recognized the weed now finally growing in his life. The suit amplified it, so he saw it, so now he knows he has to deal with it. And so the scene when they're at church, which is so cool that it takes place at a church to be the symbol of the rebirth, where Peter is reborn from the dark into the light. Now, it's easy to let the seed of bitterness grow. It's hard to rip it out when it takes root. And that's what the struggle here symbolizes between him and the symbiote. As the bell's ringing and it's the symbiote's weakness, he's taking advantage of that weakness, trying to rip it off. But that bitterness, that vengeance, that unforgiveness, it's taken a life of its own. And it's a struggle to rip that thing off. But he does it. But Brock is there at the same church witnessing this, because he's there asking for God to kill Peter, because Peter has stripped everything from him. And Brock's heart is hatred, and Brock's heart is vengeance. Brock is a cheater, and Brock is a poser. All the symbiote, all that is Venom, is now ready to take over the next vessel that will allow him in and to take advantage of the hurt and what's inside. The most powerful scene, though, in this movie for me is when Peter Parker forgives Flint Marko, because that's the tough thing. That is the absolute personal connection. The guy that murdered his uncle, he's now staring in the face. But when he's sitting there and he's willing to listen to Marko, because now he's willing to listen. Before he was high on himself and he's better than all of his criminals. He's better than all the scum of the city. But now that he's been humbled because he's made terrible choices himself and he's descended into the darkness of his own soul. Not that darkness! He's descended into the darkness of his own soul. He now realizes anybody can fall. And as he's listening to Flint Marko, this is a guy who was just afraid. His daughter was dying, he needed money, and he was scared. But even before getting the truth of the situation, Peter recognized the ugliness that was already there and had already made a choice. I forgive you.
I forgive you.
And it's amazing how powerful those words were, because saying that to Flint Marko ended the conflict between them right then and there. It ended it. It tore down that wall, and it put Flint Marko on the path to finally be able to move past the fact that he killed Uncle Ben and to be able to forgive himself. And you see the relief on his face. You have Eddie Brock, who was destroyed with the drug that he couldn't let go of. He gave himself fully to his bitterness and his vengeance, and he gave it over fully to this drug that he was medicating himself with, and he couldn't let it be destroyed without him, so he went to be destroyed with it. And finally, with Harry dying there on the ground, it is the forgiveness between Peter and Harry that allowed peace to be between them when Harry died.
You're my friend.
And finally, it's at the very end of this film, and I think it's heavily indicated that the Mary Jane Peter Parker relationship is not over. And with unforgiveness and that bitterness there, it was a wall that didn't let things move forward, but forgiveness tore down that wall, took out that poison, and has now made it possible, even though it might be a long road, for all of that to be healed, mended, and rebuilt on a stronger, firmer foundation. It's amazing that hate and vengeance feels more powerful and feels more right, but in actuality, it's death. And forgiveness that feels so hard and feels so unjust is actually the thing that brings freedom and life. And that's the direction we gotta walk on. So what did you think of Spider-Man 3? Love it, hate it? More importantly, Are you excited for the new Venom movie? Let's talk about that in the comments. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian, and hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next theological analysis or my Venom movie review. When that drops, you'll be notified. So hit that bell. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.